Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Nathan Boyd, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Francis Colley. We warmly welcome the family of Lieutenant Terence James Feely, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served and those that are still serving and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the War Memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance of the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who gave their lives for us in war and on operation for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Terence James Feely. Terence Feely was born on the 6th of December 1918 in Briargalong, Victoria, the son of Terence and Janet Feely. Known as Terry, he grew up on the family property at Briargalong, attended Briargalong State School, Maffra Higher Elementary School, where he was the school dux, and he went on to Xavier College in Melbourne, where he was involved in stock and station training. Feely was also involved in the Citizens Forces and was a serving member of the 13th, 19th Light Horse Regiment, known as the Gippsland Light Horse. On the 23rd of May 1940, Terence Feely enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. He was posted to the newly raised 2nd 4th Field Regiment and was soon promoted to acting bombardier. With his leadership potential spotted at an early stage, by July he had been promoted to acting Lance Sergeant. After a bout of tonsillitis in early September, on the 20th of October 1940, Feely and his unit embarked from Melbourne bound for overseas service. Arriving in Egypt in November, the 2nd 4th travelled by train to Palestine, where the unit trained. In March, Feely attended the Middle East School of Artillery and was promoted to sergeant. After moving to a new position in Egypt in mid-April, the regiment was equipped with 25-pounder, 18-pounder and 4.5-inch howitzers. After Tobruk was placed under siege by Axis forces in April 1941, the regiment moved to the fortress of Mersa Matruh, Egypt. As part of the invasion of Syria and Lebanon, the regiment supported the Australian 21st Brigade's advance along the coast. During the fighting against the Vichy French, the regiment undertook anti-tank, direct fire tasks and counter-battery fire. At the end of the campaign, the 2nd 4th remained in Syria, undertaking garrison duty. With the advent of the war in the Pacific, the 2nd 4th was withdrawn from Syria in December 1941. Feely left towards the end of January 1942, travelling via Bombay before arriving in Australia for a period of leave in April and May. Over the next 2 months, Feely attended junior leadership course at Warwick Farm in Sydney. After completing the course in late October, he joined his unit in New Guinea, where he was promoted to lieutenant on the 26th of November 1942. Feely did not see action again until September 1943, when he and his comrades were transported by air to support the Australian advance on Lae, where it would play a significant role in the capture of Shaggy Ridge. Late in October and November, the 7th Division's task was to clear out Japanese soldiers from the Ramu and Markham valleys. The soldiers of the Papuan Battalion were weary and footsore, and there was a high rate of sickness among the Australians. While supplies were built up and attempts made to improve the health of the men, malaria was still the cause of the greatest number of casualties, and there were new cases and recurrences daily. During November, the artillery pounded the Japanese positions. Observers from the 2nd 4th Field Regiment were forward in the main area, but forward observation officers could not direct the fire with much accuracy on many targets because of the rugged nature of the country. While the Australian gunners could not entirely silence the Japanese guns, they did manage to stop them from firing for long periods. This hide-and-seek artillery duel continued throughout November. In early December, patrols began probing Shaggy Ridge, and by the 12th of December, Feely and his men were with 2 companies of the 25th Battalion, forward from the main battalion position. Patrolling by day and setting ambush positions by night had given them little rest. An hour after midnight, the men of one of the companies heard sounds of movement. In the moonlight, sentries could see a large Japanese force. While the initial attack came from the north, men to the south soon opened fire on about 30 Japanese moving down the track across their front. Machine gun fire repelled the attackers from the north, and enemy fire died down. But the Japanese force of around 400 were by no means spent. Finding the northern approach difficult, the enemy began crawling forward. The Australians held their fire until the enemy got up and charged. The machine gun fire again broke up the attack, but the Australians were outnumbered and almost encircled. The line to battalion headquarters was cut, but the artillery line was still intact. Feely brought defensive fire on the immediate front, but while giving his fire orders, he was mortally wounded. Artillery fire was brought down on enemy positions, but the artillery telephone line was cut at 2:45 a.m, and the guns stopped shelling for fear of hitting their own men. At 3 a.m, a troop of guns beyond the Vogia River decided to take the risk and brought down fire on the last recorded target, switching to defensive fire tasks which had been effective earlier in the battle. Japanese attacks and almost constant fire continued, but they were thrown back with heavy casualties. While gradually withdrawing, the Australians unknowingly came very close to Japanese positions. Lieutenant Searles trod on a Japanese soldier when moving around his area. When the Japanese complained, he was shot. Half an hour later, a Japanese soldier shouted out insults about "white dingoes over there, honourable Japanese gentlemen over here." A burst of Bren gun fire and a shriek followed this call, and a Japanese officer was later found dead in that position. While the remainder of the Australians managed to withdraw, it was too late for Lieutenant Terence Feely, who had died of his wounds. He was 25 years old. Initially buried near where he fell, his remains were reinterred after the war. They now lie in the Leigh War Cemetery alongside 2,817 Commonwealth burials of the Second World War. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Terence James Feely, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you are able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres on the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.